Absolutely, there are some generational components to it because we learn our food behaviors from our family because our family was the first group of people who normally fed us. So I remember when I was relearning how different foods taste, and honestly, that's the journey that you're on, that most people are on when they are starting to incorporate more healthy foods. Because before I said, oh, I hate spinach, spinach is disgusting. Well, I had to think about it. Have I ever really had spinach? No, we didn't have spinach in our house. So I never was accustomed to eating those type of foods. So first step was me eating the type of foods that I like to eat when it comes to vegetables. So I started really eating those. And when I was comfortable with including vegetables in what I had, those ones that I like, then I started to explore other ones that I hadn't really had. So like the spinach, the cucumber, the cauliflower, all these other ones. So it's a journey, not just saying, oh, I don't like blank. Well, maybe you didn't like how it was prepared. Maybe you didn't like a certain version of it. Just being open and curious, having that curiosity, because there's definitely a generational component to it because you there's certain learned behaviors, but just because a behavior is learned, you can learn another behavior. So being open to learning.
Welcome to Just One Question with your host, Lion Flood. This podcast is brought to you by The Minority Report, where our goal is to inspire, educate, and empower you with cultural knowledge. We'll also have conversations dealing with social justice, mental health, and the all-around truth. So if you're bold enough to hear the truth, then you're listening to the right podcast. Let's find out what that one question is with your host, Lion Flood.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, I want to give you all a big thanks for coming back to another episode, Just One Question. That podcast where we dedicate to inspire, educate everyone to become a little bit better person of who they were yesterday. Today's guest is extremely excited for me to have on and talking about a subject that actually is dear to my heart. So I'm going to hush my mouth and allow her to give her intro and her information. But before I do that, let me just tell you all thank you for having the opportunity of being here. And let's bring on our next guest, Dr. Drew Brew. I was about to say Dr. Drew. I was just watching it earlier today. Dr. Brew, big round of applause. So, Dr. Brew, before we begin, how about you talk to some of the listeners who are listening and just give a little bit of info about yourself, because we can all read a bio and they'll be able to read that, but when they hear it from you, it's a little bit different.
Okay. Well, perfect. Thank you first so much for having me here. I am just so excited to speak to your audience. First of all, my name is Dr. Tanielle Brew. I'm from Jacksonville, Florida. I am a family medicine and obesity medicine physician. In addition to that, I am also a life coach and I teach yoga. And I created a business called Brew Wellness Collective that is a coaching business that helps people to incorporate a lot of self-care techniques in what they do, so that self-care and wellness is just a part of their life. It's not something, it's not a diet they're on, it's just who they are.
I love that because, and today I'm directly speaking to the African American community culture. I myself, everyone knows I love all, I want all, but this is dear to my heart, as I said before, because I grew up with this. I grew up with that sugary diet, that mentality of I needed it. But I also, as time grew, I learned that it wasn't directly my parents, my grandparents, their grandparents' fault. It's because that's what we knew. And if we
Mhm.
didn't, we don't, if we don't know, then we don't know, right? So, what are some ways that you think a parent who's listening to this right now could slowly work to incorporate some changes into the lifestyle? Is what I started learning to say, beyond just a diet, because it's kind of a quick little fad, but if we want to change a lifestyle, what are some tips or ways that you think they could work and change it?
Oh, this is one of my most favorite questions. Um, Favorite for several reasons. One, I've lost 100 pounds myself by incorporating a lot of lifestyle techniques. And then two, one of the reasons for me changing myself and my health is because I plan on getting pregnant in the future, and my husband has diabetes. So I knew my children would have a higher risk of having diabetes. So I wanted to make sure that I knew how to give them the best nutritional and health advice, period, because I was living that truth and I want to be able to pass that along to my own children. So, some advice that would be very helpful, one is to start incorporating foods that are more fresh, meaning like more vegetables and fruits, into what your children are eating. So start with what they like. Don't give them like cucumbers if they hate cucumbers. If they like green beans, see where you can have green beans. Really start to make it something fun. Talk to them about the type of foods that they like and incorporating those vegetables and fruit into their everyday foods. And then really be mindful of the type of snacks and the amount of snacks that are brought into the home and that your children are consuming. So try to make fruits the snack of choice. There might be a few little snacks here or there, but really making fruit the mainstay when it comes to snacks. And you don't have to be picky when it comes to the fruit. At this point, just any fruit would be very good versus having any kind of packaged food, because all those packaged food comes with more sugars, more salts, things that we don't need. And my last bit of advice is to see how you can increase the physical activity of your child. A lot of our children are playing a lot of video games and doing a lot of more home based activities. So seeing where they can go outside or be involved in sports or anything where their body is moving, or even walking, everyone going on a walk as a family, can be some easy ways of increasing the movement, which is going to help the overall health of your child.
I think that is so like head on, and it I'm going to say this. I believe it comes to the why, right? So when you were referencing just now why you work towards what you were working towards, I have a saying that I always say: your why has to be strong enough to overcome your what. What is stopping me? You're always going to have a what. This is stopping me. This is why I can't do it. But why should you, right? And you just spoke about that. And I openly talk to my listeners and let them know I do have diabetes. And my why came into why I wanted to adjust my life because of my son. I wanted to still be there to see his games and see him grow up. So I adjusted my eatings, and everyone knows me. I'm authentic. I still mess up, but I made the conscious effort to say I'm going to start incorporating these little things. And when you were talking just now about starting with the snacks that they do like, that to me was so important, because if we force feed them the cucumbers, like you said, then they're going to want to take away all of the other vegetables or fruits or anything else that's coming out of there. So, in your practice, in your life, when you're seeing people coming to you, what is something that you see the most often within the obesity or the weight gain or anything of that? What is something that's common that you see that you can tell someone out there who's listening, hey, you're not alone?
The thing I see most often is that people are discouraged because they have tried so many different things, so many different diets, seen so many different people. And so, my first step is letting them know that one, is a process, know that each diet just gives us information. So I always ask them, so you did these diets before, what did you like about it? What success did you have with it? How can we make it sustainable? So one thing that I try to work with people on is how can we make whatever changes we make something that you can do forever? Not just something that you can do for the next 3 months or 2 months, but little changes that you can do over time. You mentioned earlier that sometimes you make mistakes or you're not perfect or something like that. Well, none of us are. So it's creating a lifestyle where most of your choices are in alignment with your goal, but there are going to be some that just aren't. My wedding anniversary was on Sunday and I got chocolate cake and it was delicious. And you know what? I enjoyed it. And that's okay because I made that as a part of what I do. I also made sure I had vegetables with my meal, and like we had other things there, but you know what? I enjoyed that cake.
Yeah.
So it's making sure that you create a plan for yourself so you can still enjoy the things that you enjoy, but still having that balance. It's about having a balance.
Yeah, and it makes so much sense. So, a small example when you say make those changes that help. I am a visual person. And so my
Mhm.
wife and I, we work to each other's strengths. So, for an
Yeah.
example, what I mean by that is in the kitchen, we have like a little notepad or little sheet, and on that, it has what I'm supposed to eat that day. So
Mhm.
it would say you need 1 cup of vegetables or 1 cup. And for me, it reminds me. So now I'm not just like zoning out and like, oh, let me just grab that snack cake or something. Like, if I'm gonna get a snack cake, then need to eat X amount of cups of vegetables or incorporate it into my food. And that has helped me out so much because I hold myself accountable. And if I don't do it and I look at the paper, I'm like, oh my goodness, what happens? Now, do you think though, this is also generational, right? Because if one parent does it, they pass it to the next kid, and then they go on, so forth and so on. Is there any kind of mental thing or any kind of ways you can say to someone, hey, here's a couple of ways to work to stop that?
Yes, absolutely. There are some generational components to it because we learn our food behaviors from our family because our family was the first group of people who normally fed us. So I remember when I was relearning how different foods taste, and honestly, that's the journey that you're on, that most people are on when they are starting to incorporate more healthy foods. Because before I said, oh, I hate spinach, spinach is disgusting. Well, I had to think about it. Have I ever really had spinach? No, we didn't have spinach in our house. So I never was accustomed to eating those type of foods. So first step was me eating the type of foods that I like to eat when it comes to vegetables. So I start really eating those. And when I was comfortable with including vegetables in what I had, those ones that I like, then I started to explore other ones that I hadn't really had. So like the spinach, the cucumber, the cauliflower, all these other ones. So it's a journey, not just saying, oh, I don't like blank. Well, maybe you didn't like how it was prepared. Maybe you didn't like a certain version of it. Just being open and curious, having that curiosity, because there's definitely a generational component to it because there's certain learned behaviors, but just because a behavior is learned, you can learn another behavior. So being open to learning that new behavior.
This is dropping some golden nuggets here because as you were talking about this, a idea just came in my head, that memory rather, and it was so like, wow, I can't believe she just hit this on the head. So an example of that is I had mashed potatoes once, and I was eating it, and someone cooked it for me, and I'm eating it and ate every bit on that plate. And then afterwards, they asked me, they said, "Hey, how did you like that?" "Oh, it was great. It tasted great." And then they revealed to me that it was squash or some other thing that's made like for potatoes. And my mind mentally right away went like, "Oh, I can't believe I just ate that." But when I was eating it, it was good. And but I, I I didn't know the difference. And when you say relearning the taste buds and training them, it is so true. Man, I can't believe that just came to my mind. So, do you have any kind of stories or anything you could share with our listeners to say this is where you are, but look where you could be heading and where you could be going? Because I know we talked about the discouragement, and I know that's a big thing, and that why has to be so strong that it overcomes that what, right? So, what kind of success stories or anything you could share with someone to let them know, hey, you're not in this alone?
Yeah, absolutely. I can talk about my own story and I can bring up some patients as well. So, when I started my journey, my heaviest weight, I believe it was 273, was my heaviest weight. And I went on my journey because I went to a doctor and he was like, "You're fat." That was rude. But it did click something in me that, you know what, I really need to start taking care of myself. And at that time, I did not like any veg. Well, let me no, I like green beans and greens. Those are the only vegetables I like. I drank mostly soda. I rarely drank any water whatsoever. I never exercise. I actually used to tell people I hate sweating. And I lived off of fast food. Like that was me several years ago. Fast forward to today. Now you put any vegetable in front of me, pretty much except for squash. I still hate squash. But any other vegetable I can eat. My weight this morning was, I think, 175. And my lowest weight was 164. So I'm around that 100-pound mark, depending on the day. I work out multiple times a day, and I love water. I literally have water near me at all times, and I pretty much just drink water. I have a water bottle behind this computer. I just can't reach it right this very second. So, but that took me time to get to this point. It took me trial and error. I had to have support. Luckily, I had my personal trainer. I had different coaches that I worked with to really get me to where I am right now. But there were also ups and downs in there. I was losing weight while I was in medical school and residency, some of the most stressful times. And there were times where I took breaks. During that first year that was really hard in medical school and residency, it was not the time for me to deep dive into losing weight. I was just really just trying to stay steady. So I created little foundational things I can do, just making sure I'm eating vegetables, drinking water, walking a little bit. So that was what I did. But even with my patients, I've had patients come in who didn't know they had diabetes or were borderline, and then they were able to make those changes and lose weight, and now their diabetes is better controlled. One patient that she said that she just wanted to be able to go travel and buckle into a seatbelt on the airplane without issue. That was her goal. And by the time we finished working together, she was able to be on the airplane and buckle into the seatbelt. So there's so many different whys, and really having that strong why is very important. But also knowing that it's not just going to be all your weight's going to just drop down like this. No, it's going to be ups and downs and ups and downs and ups and downs, and being patient with yourself and having grace with yourself in the journey during the ups and downs, because all those ups and downs are teaching you something. It's all lessons in that.
Yeah, and the whys and stuff, and when you go into the diabetic portion, I remember that. I remember moments where I would test and my sugar levels were high. I mean, we're talking close to 300s, and my wife was like,
Mhm.
"Let's take you to the ER right now." And I tested recently, and I jokingly told her, I said, "Baby, I don't know if I have a pulse because it was at 105." And I've never seen it down that low, but it was those small steps that you were talking about. And even with the water bottle, like I said, I'm a visual person. And if a listener's out there who's like, I'm visual, I need accountability, I have a jug that I fill up every day. And it has the time on different levels. And I have to drink down to that level by like 11 a.m., 1 p.m., So I have to make sure that water is gone. And so that helps me because it holds me accountable for myself. And I really enjoy that. In those moments, or something that you said you want to be around for that family members and see the wedding, see the potential of having a family with the spouse or someone, those important things. And especially in our culture, we have to find ways, because I always talk about we don't have a manual. No one's really there to teach us the correct way, except we were taught from generations back, and maybe those weren't taught the correct way. So I really appreciate this. If there's listeners out there and they're saying, well, how can I get in touch with Dr. Brew? If there's maybe a question, or if they're in your local area and they can stop by to see you, what is your practice offers? What is anything that they can reach out to get the knowledge from you?
So, a couple different things. One, I want to talk about that manual. I literally just had this conversation with my husband, and it goes past just the weight. A lot of us, we don't have all these people giving us guidance on how to do things. With me and my husband in our relationship, we were saying that, well, we weren't raised by two married people. So, our marriage, everything we're doing is new. Like, it's very new to us. When it comes to eating, it's very new. A lot of things, especially in the African American community or minority community in general, if we're the first people in our family to do certain things, there is no manual. So one of the big ways of navigating this life and being successful without having to make all the mistakes is getting support, finding a group that will help you, and utilizing either a mentor or a coach. The mentor and the coaches have been so helpful for me, especially with me being the first of many things in my family. Having those mentors and coaches as a resource so I can learn from their mistakes without me having to make every single mistake has been so helpful. As to read to me, I you can follow me on Instagram at Brew Wellness Collective. It's spelled BREW and then Wellness Collective, Brew Wellness Collective. My website will be done soon, brewwellnesscollective.com. So if you want any coaching services, we're going to have lots of different programs coming out in the near future. So reach out to me that way.
Absolutely. And I'll also kind of throw a little thing on the end of that for the listeners. Here's something that I definitely know. In our culture, doctors were a big fear for us because of so many
Mhm.
things in our past. We have, like you said, if you weren't raised in a certain way, we have to relearn, and kind of adjust our thinking to that. We have to stop being so afraid to go, because I hear people sometimes say, "Well, I don't want to know the answer. I don't want to find out if I have this or that or the other." Well, if you don't, you'll find out, but it'll be too late. You need to
Exactly.
go see a family practitioner, see a family medicine doctor like Dr. Brew, that they can tell you, hey, you know what? We caught this early, you're in the beginning stages. Here are some things that we can do to adjust it so that, 6 months down the line or whatever, you aren't in a worse position, right? And then lastly, on the issue when you're talking about being patient with the weight, I always say give yourself 1 year of dedication, at least. Maybe if a year's too long, 6 months, but don't give up, right? You're thinking, I want to lose this weight. I want to just, it maybe not that fast. It happened over time. It might take time. But if you see the progress, give yourself 1 year at least to dedicate to sticking to your goals, sticking to eating better. I am living proof, and I'm still working at it. So, is there anything that we've missed? Any final words that you want to throw out there to someone? There is some young person maybe sitting in their vehicle, about to go to work, contemplating like quitting, going in there because they're dealing with some health issues, they're dealing with some mental issues. Anything you want to say out there to just kind of say, hey, you know what, we're all in this together.
So there's a couple different things. Number one, if you feel like there's only two choices in a situation, know that you're stressed out. Know that you're limiting yourself because there's never just two choices in a situation. There's probably millions of choices that we're just not able to see because we're either looking too close at it or we're overwhelmed by the situation. There's something else going on. So when you feel like you're stuck with two different choices, then make sure you get some guidance, get some advice from someone, whether it's a mental health person, whether it's a coach, whether it's a family member, someone, get some advice because there's something else that can be done. Don't limit yourself to just two choices. Another thing is see where you can start making some of the things that you do all the time automatic. For example, I have a morning routine. I wake up every morning, so I have a morning routine. I have my water next to my bed. I meditate in the morning. I do some yoga stretches in the morning. I walk my dog. That is something I do every morning. I have a night routine. There's certain things that I do before I go to bed. That helps me, one, to remember, and it makes self care just something what I do. We have so many things that we have to do in the day. There's so many things that can stress us out, whether it's at work, with family, with our own health, whatnot. Having different routines and rituals can decrease the amount of decisions we have to make in a day and can make it so that we are doing things automatic to care for ourselves, to nourish ourselves, to take a second to check in with ourselves. So, creating those routines, whether it's in the morning, whether it's a night routine, whether it's a routine with making sure you have water next to you at all times, whether it's a routine of making sure you're bringing your lunch to work with you so you can make sure you have a nourishing meal to keep your blood sugar stable, whether it's a routine of going for a walk during lunch or a walk in the morning or after you have a meal. You create those routines for yourself and habits for yourself so that being healthy and having self care is just what you do.
There it is, ladies and gentlemen. If you don't hear nothing else, let me see. Let me get my little thing ready. Make sure I got it. It's Message. I just thought that the other day. I was watching In Living Color, and I remember they used to go, message. Put it into your mind. You
Yes.
heard it right here from Dr. Brew. This is something that I think we all have to work at, and it takes effort, but it's so important, as you were speaking of the support groups, right? We have some in so many different avenues. My wife and I always talk about when we were younger, we didn't have podcasts, we didn't have these things where we could be reached out, we didn't have a social media where it's some negatives, but then there's a lot of positives where there's social groups on there, support groups. You can easily find them. They don't have to be in your same city, they could be far away. Maybe you don't want to be known or someone in your same area. Well, you can join one that's states away, but join something, right? Find that support as you were talking about. So I sincerely appreciate you for coming along and sharing this knowledge with all of our listeners. And I would ask you just to hold on for 1 second as I do a little housekeeping and pay some of these bills. 1 second, Dr. Brew. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in to another episode of Just One Question. As we always say here, we love your questions. We love the comments that you send in to us. I'm going to be honest, and you know how I am. I don't read every part of the sentence, but I do read every one that does come in. And those are some of the suggestions that we go out and try to find the guests that you want to hear and listen to. So keep those coming in. And as we always say as well, remember to live while you are alive.
Thank you for listening to Just One Question. I know you enjoyed the show because you made it this far. If you want to hear more, subscribe, share, and don't forget to give us a 5-star review. Now, what's your one question?